for some people to jump on. My name is George Alderete. I'm with Keune Haircosmetics here in Atlanta. I'm just going to scoot that over just a little bit. And so what I'm going to cover today are many different things, especially working with direct dyes. We're going to be talking about our color Chameleon. It's just been something that was launched in March, but unfortunately with everything that's gone on, and I know there's been a lot of uncertainty with all of you out there trying to get back to work, and my heart goes out to all of you. I know that I see a lot of your posts saying that you're getting ready and organized and really getting yourselves ready for reopening in your businesses. So good luck to all of you on that. So I want to talk a little bit about my experience and what I went through. And I guess my first thing I would like to ask is, have you ever tried to figure out an application that you see on something, say, like for me it was the ad campaign with the rainbow, and I have never really experienced horizontal placement. I'm always the kind of placement that's very natural and soft and movement and creating movement in it and working with some principles, so and also the haircut, which is really important. So my discovery is that it was a lot harder than I thought. And so I want to share some of the things that helped me to move along and that I experienced. So today we're going to be covering that, like how to do your horizontal placement, how to get a really nice blend, how do you really swipe, or what are the tones that you can mix together. So we're gonna be exploring that whole aspect of the application. And then we're also going to be exploring the tonal aspect and what you could be using together as far as the combinations. I think that's something that we all kind of sit back and think about. So let me just kind of show you a little bit about Color Chameleon so that you guys can see it. I don't know if you guys can see the book here, but there's the cover. Jessica, how are you? Jessica Mills is going to be with me. She's our VP of Education and Shows, and so she's the little voice that you're going to hear in the backdrop if any of you have any questions. And please field all your questions and she'll make sure to get them to me. We're going to also be talking about this benchmark that we created. I did it this weekend. This is a wig. This unit is, let's see, 24 inches, and they usually measure from top to bottom. So that's the length, and I wanted that length especially to show you the kind of color blendings that we did with it. Working with, our violet all the way through magenta, rose, orange, yellow, and maroon. So that was another color that we used. So we did 5 different, and violet. We did 5 different variations that you're going to be able to see me apply. So we're going to use those today too. But just to go over some of the important things on Chameleon, there's a chart that kind of gives you the end results here. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but what's really interesting to me that in looking at it was understanding the level. We recommend usually a level 10 or 8 to 10 on up. If you can get any higher than that, good luck with the hair being compromised. But it's really important that you have an understanding. So what we did was we built in a visual for all of you. So we built in a visual from level 6 to level 8 to level 10 with the different variations of those colors and what they look like on those levels. So not only can you utilize a direct dye to create vibrancy and pastels, but you can also use a direct dye for toning, which is really cool, and dimensional color. So that's something that's really important. Now, just to cover a little bit of how many variations we have 9 intense direct dyes that are really cool to work with, and they are exactly what you see. So I'm going to show you really quick, this is our rose. This is our yellow, which is an amazing yellow. It is one of the best yellows I've ever worked with. Our orange, which really is beautiful, and it's more of a burnt orange, but it's actually really pretty, and you can really have a lot of variation with it in combination with some of the other colors. This is our magenta, if you can see that. And then we have our maroon, and it's just a little bit deeper and a little bit redder than the magenta. Magenta tends to have a little bit more vibrancy to it, but I love to blend the two in combination, especially with the violet. So on the base, just to kind of cover what we used over here, I did violet 20 grams with 2 grams of dark. And what I want you to remember is when you're doing those types of colors and you're adding the dark into it. So let me give you an example. This is the dark. These are the 2 shade shifters that we were talking about. So we have 9 intense tones, and then we have 2 shade shifters. And in those shade shifters, you're going to notice that there's a dark and there's a clear. Now the dark, I want you to really look at it because it's really cool to use, because when you built it into your color formulation, it actually smokes them out or gives them a more vintage effect and a lot more depth. So always remember, so the ratios on these, we have them on the chart. It's a 1:1, and that's really nice to see. So you can see the deposition that you're going to get in the tone. So you see it down here on the chart. So when you look at it, it's a 1:1, and then it's a 5:1. So the 5:1 meaning 5 parts of the dark with 1 part of the color, and vice versa. So 1:1, equal parts. And then when you go into the clear, we have a 1:5, a 1:10, and a 1:20 to really soften and pastel those tones out in combination. Now that's just a guideline. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to utilize that guideline. You can combinations and you can make whatever you want to make. Just always remember that when you're using dark, you're going to get that dominant color is going to dominate over it. So just make sure to experiment with it a little bit, and what you see in the bowl is what you're going to get. The other thing that I want to recommend for the pasteling, if you want it softer, is to add your clear in first, do your grams, and then add your color in, and you can see how it's softer than it would be coming out of the tube. So you can see it visually turn inside the bowl. So that's really important when you're doing that kind of mixing and formulation. I have a recommendation to how I come up with my combinations of colors. I've been playing on this app called Coolers. It's Coolers. And it's an app that you can get for your phone, and you can get it also online on your computer. What I love about it is that it's a graphic chart that actually helps you to decipher tones and tonalities together and how they work. It also breaks down the color wheel and talks about hues, talks about saturation, it talks about primaries and how they work, secondaries, tertiaries, triadic color, and how you can work with the color wheel in order to create those tones. So it's really helping me to understand just a little bit better how a direct dye will work in combination with other direct dyes. So that's really important. So I like that as a visual tool to kind of play with, and then I use that as a gauge when I'm mixing my colors and my variations, and then I swatch those out, and then by swatching them, it gives me a better idea. It's like, oh, I maybe need a little more yellow, or maybe I need a little more clear, or maybe just a double or a pinch of the dark. Now our dark is also on the charcoal-y side. It's not black, so I just want you to know that. And if you want to, you can even soften that dark with a little bit of clear. So I played with that combination, and that works really well to soften that dark up instead of putting it into the pure pigment. So again, let me just show you what we did here. You can see how dark her base is, and that is 20 grams. That is 20 grams. Let me just take her off. So that is 20 grams right here of violet and 2 grams of dark. And then I just smudged that right on the base, and then on the extension, I took violet pure in its purest form and extended that out. Now in these combinations right here, because they're all close together, you're going to see that the application is going to be a little bit more of a sweeping motion into one another to get a melt. And then as I worked, I separated them. Now here's the key that I want you to remember when you're using Color Chameleon. When you're using it, where you put it is where it sits. So if you have any line of demarcation, it's going to show, and when you rinse, it's not going to bleed into it. That's one of the most amazing things about this product that I really like. The other thing is I like the B5 in it and the Solimer that actually gives you a lot of shine and reflect on the color. So I barely even prepped this with any product. I think I did Absolute Mousse just at the base, and I blew it out, and then I just set it with wave iron really soft just to give you this little crinkle of a wave. So it's really, you can see how high the definition of shine is in the color. And then if you want to create pastels, I have another example that you can see that I did on an opal pastel that I showed a few weeks ago. And this was something with more grays, pinks, lavenders, and it was around Easter time I think we did it. And that was the inspiration for it, to get those types of variations. And then I have another one with a mint green that I'll show you. And yellow. So same combination. I just wanted to create more of a, like an Easter basket. So those are the colors that you see in through there. And right through there you can see that yellow and the pink and the soft mint. So that's just another combination that you can see that works really well that you can play with to create. Now I believe this ratio was a 1:20 ratio, so you can see the very softness that it creates in the rose compared to what it shows you right here. So it really does dilute it, and it really does give it a sheerness and tonality, so it's really pretty to play with. So for those of you that might have some questions, we're going to start on the application. Please throw them at me, anything that you can think of, or if you just want to say hey and hi, that'll be great.
Everyone's saying hi and beautiful.
Who is saying hi?
Debbie has a question. She saw Mariette do a technique with what looked like a shaving brush. Did you try that one already?
With a what brush?
A shaving brush.
A shaving brush. I haven't seen it.
I haven't either. We have to look at that.
Oh no, is this something from Holland that we need to get? If it is, we need it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask Debbie, if you have a picture of it, just DM me and show me a picture so I can pass it along to Jessica, and then we can always work from there and see how that works. So the blending brush that I'm going to be using today, I have an angle brush right here, and I have a square brush. Depending on the line that I want to create is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to use them as a dry tool afterwards, and I'll show you. So I've already begun the back. Everything was done in 3 sections. 1 in the back, 2 in the sides, and then the 4th section, we're going to over direct and extend it. And there's some tips that I want to give you when you're extending from the front to the back, and you're going to follow the natural form of the head. That's the other thing that's really key. So let me get my gloves on. And then I can get started to show you this placement. Now this is an Olivia in hair art. She's a really beautiful level 10. We get to use them at the Academy for creative color, so they're really pretty to work with, and we don't have to do all the extra work of pre-lightening. But we do recommend that if you're going to lighten, this was about a level 8, 9, and then she did have some soft hues of a soft pink. What I did was I just tipped it out. I use Ultimate Blonde powder and 30 volume, and I worked that through some of the ends just to soften out some of that pink and lighten it up. I did do a control swatch with 2000 by itself, and those are 2 things that we recommend. We could either use any of our lighteners, so you can use our Ultimate Blonde to remove, or you can use our 2000 if you'd like with 20 or 30 volume, except you're not going to use the boosters because the boosters have a persulfate in them. And so what that'll do is we know that some persulfates will drive the direct eyes in, and you just get a lighter version of itself. So you want to really be careful when you're using lighteners to remove any artificial or direct eyes. So you'll always get that weird starting level. The starting level over here was the starting level of an 8. Thank you for that. So she was a level 8, not quite a 10, so we just tipped it out, and I ran through some lightener onto the ends to see. With the 2000, I didn't get as much lift. It was very faint, so I went with the Ultimate Blonde. Also, you could have used our Freedom Blonde if you wanted to hand paint and leave it open air. That works really well. I would just increase my developer since it is an open air lightener and it's clay-based. You want to really make sure when it encapsulates that hair that you use a little higher volume because it's going to take that and just lift it really softly. But it does give you really great lift too, so definitely you can use that as well. Recommendations? Yes.
Question.
Yeah.
After lightening and preparation for the pastel, do you tone the remaining yellow out prior to applying the pastel color?
Oh, I see. So toning out the yellow if you wanted to use another pastel directly over it by removing it. Correct?
No, actually from the pastel one earlier, when
this
you
one.
lightened it, did you have to tone it, or did you just take it past yellow before you applied your pastel shades over it?
Oh, I see. This right here was exactly this level. So she was a level 10. So I didn't really have to. What I did have to do though, great question by the way, thank you for that, whoever asked it, was the yellow was still a little faint. Remember when you're painting on a white surface, that you might think the vibrancy is going to be there in pure tone, but you're working on white, so you don't really have an undertone on your canvas. So by working with the yellow, I felt like I needed it to pop a little bit more, so I did a second application. The other thing too is that yellow was the first to leave the hair, in my experience when rinsing them. The other great thing about it was I didn't get any bleeding with the mint or the lavender or the pink onto the yellow. So that was really interesting for me too as a colorist working on these colors. Did that help with your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I didn't have to tone it out, not at all. You might want to pre-soften it though if you do have a very vibrant pink. I would recommend using, in our line we have a high lift called our alternative to bleach, which is 2000, and it's a good high lift to use to remove color. It takes about approximately 20 minutes to 50 minutes, depending on how long that color's been there. And here's my rule of thumb. The older the color, the more difficult it is to remove. The fresher the color and the younger the color, the easier it is to remove. So just remember that, how long she had it, how many applications, and when you're thinking about the application, that's gonna really help you to have an understanding of how to get that color out. So I think some of us in the salon, we automatically go to a lightener or a bleach of our choice. This would be a great way to do it with a lot more integrity in the hair, a slower process, but still really giving that lift and taking out that direct dye. So you're gonna get almost nothing to it in that soft pink that was left in there. It came right up. So the yellow was a little bit more vibrant then, especially with the orange. So you got more of this amber orangey kind of yellow because the combinations when I drug them through just a little bit. Speaking of dragging through, I'm going to start off with my very first section. And I hope you can see this clear enough on the camera. Is it okay, Jess?
Yeah, it was beautiful. I want to add a little bit to the previous question about the yellow.
Yes.
She's referring to the yellow. I'm referring to the remaining pigment contribution of a level 9 or 10. So.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, Debbie, right?
Deborah.
Or Deborah. Great. Okay, Deborah, you're absolutely right. Yes, the undertone at that level is going to lend to the end result. Let me repeat myself. The undertone at that level is always going to lend to the end result. So what's going to happen? If you have a level 6 and you apply a red on it, look how deep it looks. It's a red-brown. Okay? If you go to an 8, you can see that the vibrancy is not as intense, but when you go to the 10, you get more pure tone because of the undertone lending to the end result. So that's a great question. So whatever you're going to put it on is going to be a part of your end result. So just remember that. If you want more vibrancy and more vivid tone, you're going to want to get it up to a 10. Now, let's just say that you do dimensional color and you're using cream bleach and you have highlights in there and you want to tone those highlights with like a violet. You can do that and you'll get a beautiful lilac on those highlights over the dimensional blonde. So that works really well as well. But if you have a darker tone, like an 8 or a 7 in that variation, it's going to mute it out and it's not going to show up too much. But on the whiter pieces, the lighter pieces, it's going to have a little bit more kick and vibrancy to it. Absolutely. So that, I get your question now. Thank you, Deborah, for that.
So you definitely could tone if you felt you needed to for some of the other shades.
Perfect example is if you have a beautiful copper and she's browned out and you need to punch it up a little bit, there's no reason why you could use clear, orange and yellow combinations. You make up the ratio yourself and apply it as a toner and you're going to get a beautiful punch up of the color. So it just refreshes it. Just keep in mind that you're not going to have the durability like you would in semi-color, because semi-color is going to give you a longer lasting durability, whereas a direct dye is going to maybe last up to 20 washes, if that, depending on the porosity. So that's really key. Always the porosity is key. All right, so let me...
Do you use semi-color before you apply a color chameleon?
I have. I've used silver, and I've used a little bit of tinta. I've used that to give me an undertoner to cool it out. But I've used semi to get a really cool base, like to gray it out, to get a really good silver. I've used silver on there, very little clear. And I think I've used, let me give you a really good combination. So 1/3 of silver, 1/3 of gray, and 1/3 of clear in combination with 2 parts of activator. So let's just say you have, 20 grams, you want 40 grams of your activator. I've put that on, I use that as my filler, and then I've done my cooler tone on top of that with a direct dye. So say a silver lilac, I wanted to create, we have great combinations and formulas in the book for you that you can see, or if I wanted to use another direct dye tone that's on the cooler side, say a little bit of the maroon or the magenta, that'll have my undertone to be on the cooler side. So yes, absolutely, I've used them before. And it works really well. So let me get into the technique of what we're doing. So remember I was talking a little bit about sweeping. And what I noticed about that is, let's just say you wanted to extend that. What you want to do with your brush is really work in a sweeping motion. See how I'm just sweeping it? And you can see into here how it's just the variation of the colors gets softer. Then the next tone I'm going to use is my maroon. And I'm going to put that right close to it, and I'm going to sweep some of that into it. I'm going to use the tip of the brush and again sweep onto the ends. The next one is going to be magenta. And I keep it pretty close, and I just sweep it in. You really want to know to make sure that you get good saturation. With this direct dye, it's really important that saturation is key. I've had the unpleasurable moment of taking off the foil or taking it off open face and missing a spot, and it is directly where you put it is where you're going to see it. So just make sure you get really good saturation and don't be fearful of too much color. So that's really important. So we have the violet, we have the maroon, the magenta, and then I'm going to take a little bit of the rose. We're going to work that rose right up to the edge there. And you can see that I'm making just a little sweeping motion, kind of like a little C section, like just a little C right there, just kind of sweeping it. And then I'm going to take my orange. Now when I start working with these two colors, the orange and the rose, I'm going to keep it further apart, okay? Then I'm going to take my dry brush, and now I'm going to work that in together and get that soft blend. Because you don't want to, when you're doing the blend, I don't want this rose to overtake my orange. I want it to look like a transition, so it's just transitioning in through, giving me a little bit of a coral into the orange. So there's my dry brush. Then I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to do the same. Now, while I'm working, I'm going to turn her so you can see, as I'm working up to the top of the head, you're going to notice that the graduation and the form of the head is going to give you more length. So this is allowing me to have more yellow in my section, where the bottom sections I had a lot less yellow because I didn't have as much length from the nape down. So that's key too, making sure you get that in there. Then I'm just going to take and saturate that a little bit more. I want to get as much yellow in there as possible. I'm going to take my dry brush again. And I've already wiped it off. You might want to use more than one. And you can see how that orange with that yellow is giving you that little flamed effect. And there's no reason why you don't have to. If you want, just drag this because underneath is the same color. And now I'm going to apply the yellow to the ends. I'm leaving everything open face and directly working on top of each section. So I'm not closing it. So that'll also save you some time in the salon. We're going to work straight across. I'm going to work over here to this side. I'm taking more of a bricklayer sectioning because the width of the head is a little bit wider towards the top. You want to comb that out. You don't want any of the hair to be bunched up in within itself because that's going to give you a little line of demarcation. We're going to work. Now, remember on this mannequin what we did was we did the violet with the dark. Then I took the pure violet, I extended it to give me a little bit of a shadow. Here is my maroon, magenta, really working that in.
I have a great question for you.
Yeah, what is it?
It's from LaShawn. What is the process to touch up this technique and how often should it be done?
Great question. So, for touching up, so she's going to come back and she's going to be a lot more faded, but you're going to see the variation of the colors, right? So where you read it, I would just have, say, my colors that I like, a little bit of clear and a little bit of dark. So what I can do is I can either punch it up as I'm moving along and I can see exactly where the lines. Now, 9 times out of 10, somebody with this type of color, people with vivids, like to change it immediately, like say 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks out. So what I'd recommend is do a full color removal, charge for that service, and then go through with another type of application. But you can still do a horizontal placement, and when you pull the lines out with those fine sections, you'll see exactly where your line is to refresh. So you can always do that if they want the same color. Did that help?
Yeah, and do you always work with Color Chameleon on dry hair?
Yes, I've worked on it on damp hair, but I'd rather get as much of the dampness out because it gives me more control and I can see what my full saturation is. When the hair is damp, it clumps together and it holds itself tight amongst itself, so you can't really get in there. When it's dry, you can see exactly where the hair is. And where I learned that from is working on wefts and wigs. So I've done it with other, like when we had, like say, color craving, you could use on damp hair. That would be great. It was a completely different animal. So for me on this one, I need to work with it so I can see exactly where I'm placing it. So I would definitely recommend using dry hair. So yes, it was washed, rinsed, and then I blew it all out, and then I did my application. Now you can see that there's a little bit of a split in between the orange and the rose. So I'm just going to take that color, I'm going to blend that in. Use my dry brush, wipe it off, and now I'm going to mix it. You can see now there's the blend in that little flame right there. And that's going to be your melt.
Another great question. Does water dilute the product?
I believe water can dilute your product. I really do. Some people think that you can absorb more color. I think it tends to dilute it or to repel it. That's just one more variable that's in the hair that's going to lend to your end result. So that's how I look at it. That's my personal preference. Great question, though. Again, we're just going to go in and we're going to melt that together there. And as I'm working up towards the top. Now, so for those of you that are more visual like myself, I have taken the liberty of creating some head forms for you to see. And I'll post these on my on the Instagrams, and I will put them on Facebook as well, so that you guys can always use them as a reference and do a screenshot of them. So here you're going to notice there's a little gap in between. That's really important. And you know, in doing the blend, when I was first doing the rainbow color, doing the application, I had a great learning experience, and that experience was that wherever you put it is where it's going to sit. And I tend to blend everything. I have a soft eye for color, and learning in photo shoots that if you want that vibrancy, then you shoot with the vibrancy. Definitely put the vibrancy in, or else it's not going to show. Okay, there you go there. Take another white section over, and I'm just kind of moving over from side to side. And everything's open face. Now, what's really important in the rinsing process is that you rinse it, you don't shampoo this color out. I rinse it with cool water. And what you're going to notice is that the water runs pretty clear, which is remarkable with a direct eye. we did a group session at the academy with all the educators, and we all did it together, and we were just astounded at the fact that if I leave that space in there just like that, and I rinse it, that's exactly what you're going to get. So here's the orange. Here's some yellow. And if there's any questions out there, please feel free. You see the blend? You see that melt in there? Awesome.
Quite beautiful, George.
It's like, I don't know, I think it looks delicious. It looks like candy.
It reminds me of, remember that, like as a kid, the hurricane snow cones?
Oh yeah, it kind of does. Okay, so I want to talk about how do you extend it. So let's just say what we're going to do in this section right here is we're going to take my existing base, which is already there. Let's just say on this right here, we have the 20 grams of 20 grams of violet and 2 grams of the dark. So that's the sponge. Then I'm going to extend my little bit of violet straight. Then I'm going to melt in my maroon.
That's another great question.
Yep.
Are these products safe to use on relaxed hair?
Definitely. There's no ammonia in them at all. So you're not going to do any type of color service on it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not going to do any more chemical service to the hair. And the porosity is really going to lend to it accepting the color and taking it. So yes, absolutely. Definitely.
Did you use it on the Naha shoot?
Yes, I did use it on the Naha shoot. So it was on relaxed hair.
Here's another great question. After lightening,
Yes.
Do you use shampoo and conditioner before drying and adding the color chameleon?
Oh, great. So if you did a color removal before, prior to the service, what you can do is you could do the after shampoo program that we have, which is our after shampoo, but I wouldn't definitely recommend the balsam. I would just do a shampoo. The balsam would lock it down too much. You want to keep it in an open state so that you can accept color better. So just use your shampoo, one shampoo, maybe a light second shampoo if you'd like, and then go from there. Good question. This is a good one. I like that one. So on the benchmark here, because of the length, you can get a really good variation. I experimented a little bit in the front. I did a little bit of the yellow, then the orange, and then running through the yellow just to see how it's going to work with the wave. Where on this side, you can see that it's more of the rose, the orange, then the yellow towards the ends. And I really do think that some of that soft pink in there really lends to the color to make it a little bit richer on my melt. So that's really important. And the iron that I use, if any of you are interested, it's a really great waving iron to use. But this was the iron that I used. So it's really simple to work with and easy just to kind of get that kind of a quick wave in there for me. So it's by Hot Tools. And it's one of my favorite tools to work with, especially when you're doing kind of like waving or just kind of, instead of the traditional beach wave. Now we're going to go with magenta. And you'll see when you're saturating where it's not in there, the hair will separate a little bit. The other thing that you can do is if you're really not sure if it's saturated enough, if you comb through it, the white hair will peek through. So when you comb through it, you're going to see some of the white hair, and that's going to tell you whether you have great saturation or not.
Here she is.
There she is.
Oh, good question. Can you use protein spray instead of the conditioner after you, like we've used Clarify?
Yes, you could use it and leave it in the hair, absolutely, because it's going to equal out your porosity. So if you have really compromised integrity on some of the hair, let's just say that the integrity of the hair right here is really great, and that you know that she's done several bleach washes or several processes to use direct dyes, then I would definitely recommend it. It's going to help to even that out so that you can really take the color more evenly in tone. And sometimes I've not done that, and I've noticed where I worked with it really where the porosity is great, and then where it's not so good, I noticed that the hair was a little hollower or weaker. So yeah, absolutely. So let me give you an example. So if I were using protein spray, I would definitely use it on the ends where maybe she had a little bit more compromise of the hair. Leave it in, and then directly work on top of that. Dry it into the hair though. Okay, so you want to work on dry hair. The processing time is approximately 20 minutes, so that's really key. Okay, I'm going to take this last section, work that through. Then I'll work on the top so you can see it, and I can show you how the over direction is on the top. Now look at how high I'm working. So this is giving me a lot more range of hair to work on. So it's going to give me a really good melt into the back. So let me show you. So see how the melt is a lot longer to travel in some of those layers under here? You can see that. But as I'm working up to the top of the head, right in through here, I can drag that out a little further and extend that violet just a little bit more into my maroon. And those are the tones that you get into here. So you can see the dark, a little bit lighter, the magenta, the rose, you can see where it's fainter, the orange, and then the yellow. So that's where you're going to get the intensity of your melt through that. Okay, so we're going to continue. What time do we have?
You have, it's 1:37.
Oh my gosh, time's so fast. Time goes by so fast. Okay. Rose. Orange.
And that's a melt.
Now this is a melt.
Show the difference when you're done between the blend on the darkers and the
Right, so I'll show you right here on this piece right here, so you can see her. So in this area of the hair, this is, you can see the melt right here. I mean the blend, excuse me, right here, because I'm blending those colors together. They're very simple. They're very close together in tone. So between the violet, maroon, and magenta. Then as I'm working down into the rose, the orange, and the yellow, I'm separating them just a little bit to get more of a melt. So that's really important on the visual effect that you want to create with the hair color that you're using. So there is a difference.
Hey George, would it be okay to use balsam after you remove Color Chameleon or nothing?
You know what? I've tried it. I would say, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, it won't hurt it, but you know what? I found that by itself, the hair feels really good and detangles very easily. And I don't know if it's because of the Solimer and the Pro B5 that's in the product, because that's what gives it that consistency, but it rinses out really well. So I really find that I don't have to use anything or detangle the hair. It just gets detangled. It was really this length, and this is a wig. So this was, you know, it's been colored before, it's been had dimensional color, and I thought for sure I was gonna need something just to added conditioner or balsam just to get through it. But it once I rinsed it and towel dried it, it came right out. It detangled easily, it was shiny, and it felt really good. And it didn't feel like there was any residue in the hair as I was working. So that was really key too. Did that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I want to talk about the top. The sides are basically very similar to the back. So you have the side section, the back, and the other side. On the top, what I'm going to do, and I want to show you this, it's really important, is I'm just going to do the outline. Just going to do the outline so you can see it. Let me get this hair out of the way. Clean my brush. So here's the outline.
So what shampoo and conditioner would you recommend for the client to use at home?
Color care, I would use Color Brilliance, and definitely use Color Care. I would definitely keep Color Care as my go-to. Good question. So we're just going to take that. So once you do your outline, what you're going to notice when you're working, we're going to over-direct all of this section to the back and away from the face. So here's a key that I want you to really understand when you're working into the front. This hair, since I'm over-directing it towards the back, has a lot more to travel. And you're going to be working on the interior of the hair, right? So what you want to do is, as you're working towards the front, your extension at the root has to be a lot shorter or smaller. But what you're going to notice as I'm working, you're going to start to see, and you'll know if you're doing this correctly, because see how this little hollow mark is here and then here? As I'm over-directing this section, and then the next one and the next one in front of that, you're going to go from shallow to deep to shallow just because of the form of the head shape. So that's really key, and that'll help you to see it visually if you're doing it correctly or not, and you're getting a proper blend or a melt. So now here's this section here. I'm going to over-direct it towards the back. Smudge that in. I'm going to turn her to the side. You can actually see the curvature of the head right here. That's what you want to see. So you know that your placement's parallel to what's underneath. This is going to be a blend. And you notice how much shorter they are. This is going to be a blend. The rose. I'm going to start using a melt. My orange. Melt. And I'm going to have a lot more yellow as I'm working onto the top. So you can see that this section is got a lot more of the last two colors because of where it's got to travel to towards the front.
What was your application time, George?
I think on her, because there was so much hair in it, it took me about a good hour. Yeah.
That's still pretty good for the amount of hair that's there.
Well, between that and arguing with Bill, probably 2 hours. But between that and him telling me, don't forget, you got to do a melt. Don't forget, you got to do a blend. He's my watch. He's my watch dog. But I mean, I really like doing the wig because I'm going to be able to use it, you know, we can use it for a shoot or something, Jessica.
It'll look great on me.
Woo! Maybe you have to use it for our next artist connection call. So you can see the curvature of the head. You can see as I'm traveling towards the front how every direction is making it further back away from the face. So let me just move her down for you. So you can see that as I'm working towards the front. And this is going to be a little bit deeper as I'm extending it, only because of the natural shape of the head, not because of my application. There's my blend. Bring that a little further. Now, I've done this application where I varied the tones. So let's just say I did these colors here, and then I do the opposite. So then I start with the yellow and go back. Yellow, orange, rose, magenta, maroon, and then violet on the ends. And you get this really good, like, kind of like a hologram kind of effect. Rose. What's that, Jess?
You're at 15 minutes.
Oh my god. I'll be able to finish the ends. Or the top. It's because I was talking too much.
That's a good thing.
Yes, but we have a good benchmark, so it really helps when you have a great benchmark to show the visual. Now on the section below, what you noticed was I had it pre-done, I had the base already in. On this, I'm doing it as I'm going, so you can actually see the melt as I was working. So here's my point. So when I'm working this way and I'm doing the base first, it really does help me to get that slippage through with the product. So I like to do it as I'm going. If I pre-do it, I'm pre-doing it for time for an education purpose or a demo or a look and learn. So that'll help me to prepare it so I have more time to talk about the tips and tricks that we're doing. So in a real life scenario, I think that's what it only took is I did it as I went along. And so you did your base and your mid colors into your end colors. So that does make a big difference. What's that, Jessica?
Janae, she said, me and my client are watching you right now, and we love the colors.
Hey, Janae. Hi, client.
Do you use a dry color price to blend the color melt together? Oh, I think this is just a color brush.
Yes, I do. So this is the one I'm using right now. I wipe it off on my towel, and then I go back and blend. Whatever colors that I'm doing, I'm blending again. Wait. It takes a little more time, but I tell you, the blend, the end result is so much prettier. And I like pretty.
Yeah, you do. If you were painting with one color for a section, would you just lay each section on top of the previous without the use of foil?
I have. I've done that. I did the opal pastel like that because of the length. Now, when we're working with a lot of length and the heaviness of the hair, it can tend to seep onto each other because of the graduation of the head form. So you might get, under this magenta here, you might get some of the orange from the underneath sitting into it, and it might change the tone a little bit. Because remember, this section is going to sit and be in the front right here. So I wouldn't want any of those sections to bleed onto it. So great question. But if I were laying it in the back, in a horizontal placement, just straight down, absolutely. You could even put something in between just to keep the section up off itself, like a piece of cotton. But that's going to be that extra step. And I know that what you're saying is you want to probably save some time. So yes, you can absolutely do that. You're just going to have to be a little bit more diligent with your application. And if you're doing any of your finger blending, you know, your two fingers and blending it, or you could use a board. I've seen Alicia or Bella do a board, and then she just lays it down beautifully. that is really a great application to do, but the only thing is, if she gets up and moves in the salon, you might have some color running into each other. So just be careful with that. But yes, you can absolutely do that. Where are we at on time?
10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Oh my gosh.
You're doing great.
Good. Well, the questions are great, and I'm hoping everybody will be able to try some Color Chameleon when they get back into their salons. I know that, you know, for Keune, we're super excited about having a direct size system that really works beautifully for all of you. And I know that all the kids, I call them the kids, all the academy trainers and all the educators in the field are super pumped to have a direct eye system that they love. And the color choices are beautiful. You know, even our green is pretty. And then with the darking, it is really deep forest green. So here's my melt. You keep that section in between. There it is there. And then I'm going to do my dry brushing. White. Blend. So let me give an example. So since you asked that question, I'm going to try it right here. We're going to do the base. We're going to work on both sides because I don't have support underneath it to get the saturation. So if I were freehanding it, this is maybe going to make me use my fingers or the back of my hand to get the blend. But now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to work on both sides to get a better blend. So I'm going to work on the top, making sure that my tension is really strong up here because that's helping me to get that saturation. And then down into here. Now I'm going to work that through.
It's not as clean.
And it's not as clean as I'd like to see it. So cleanliness is everything when you're doing any creative color. I learned that the hard way. And see how it's almost blending into the other section below it?
Are you wiping off your melting brush with a damp towel?
Yes, with a damp towel. Thank you for that. So I have a damp towel next to me, and I wipe it off. And you can see, here's my towel. Messy.
I feel like that might take longer in application. What do you think?
This right here would take longer for me. It would drive me crazy because of my saturation. Whereas I have the support of a board or a foil, I can actually get my saturation in there just a little bit better. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my foil underneath it now. And now I can get my dry blend. And now I can feel the saturation. And you can see the clumpiness and the smoothness here. So there is an entire difference in the application. I would definitely have to use it, but it's going to be a lot more of a blend. You're not going to get a melt. There's a big difference. And you know, I think when everybody started hand painting and doing a little bit of the foliage or balayage, or whatever you guys do, I do foliage because I love to incorporate foils with my hand painting. So I do both. But I think that is where all these terms came up as far as melting, are you blending, or you know, are you sweeping, what are you doing? And it's important to understand that because that's you kind of wonder, and I did wonder, when in the horizontal placement, I will tell you, if you practice horizontal placement, it's a game changer. It really is, because it really allows you to see all of your mistakes. Diagonals hide everything. Verticals camouflage everything. But horizontals will show everything. Believe me. All right, so this is going to be close to my last section. you can see that I have a lot more yellow because I have a lot more way to travel. Now some of that bled on there, that's okay. I don't mind that. I like that little bit of a burnish color in there with my yellow.
So George, when the color starts to leave the hair, and you're going to reapply, would you reapply the same colors even over the faded areas?
Yeah, I would refresh them. I might even want to dilute it a little bit. So yeah, you can refresh them. Let me finish this here and then I'll show you. I'm going to take my gloves off. I'm going to cover that up so that protects it. Because it is a horizontal placement, I'm going to move her back here. Move her here. But because of the placement, I can right through it now and you can see it. You're going to be able to, when I lift this one section, I can see exactly where that color is living. So it's really easy to do another blend and refresh it over again. Just make sure though, you're going to want to do kind of a melt application because there's color already underneath there. And that's going to lend to that tone. So you don't want that other color, the transition between the two tones. You don't want this in between to get a line of demarcation is what's going to happen. Because, you know, color on top of color on top of color, it gets darker and darker and darker. So you might want to dilute it with a little bit of clear, or maybe even do your melt with the clear. And that'll help to give you that blend. So that'll help you. But you'll be able to see the line of demarcation when you lift it and she comes back in several weeks to get a new application. That help?
Yeah, that's a great tip.
So, I mean, those are things that you can do with clear. I just want to get her to the disco. Did I say disco? I did say disco, didn't it?
You did say disco.
Discos are coming back, baby. That and roller skating. Because you can keep a distance, social distance. So there you go. So this is this. And then I just use a little bit of soft set spray just at the end, just to give it a little bit more. And I would probably go over it with some brilliant gloss spray too. But I just wanted to show you the reflect on its own so you could see it. And there you go. So just to recap, the colors that we use on the base were violet with 20 grams and 2 grams of dark. And then next to that we used maroon. And then underneath that we did magenta, the rose, the orange, and then the yellow to get this kind of a blend. The application was all horizontal throughout the sides and the back, and then over directed onto the top so that you could see this blend. And you can see how long that travels. So you can see how that's traveling throughout that. So I'll show you the formulation page, so that you guys can see the formula. So these are the color variations that we used. So you have the violet, the maroon, magenta, rose, orange, and yellow. And this is the end result. What do you guys think? You like it? If you like it, give me a lot of love out there. How are you doing that time, Jess?
Yeah, you're great. And you'll be posting those formulas, correct?
Mm-hmm. And the head sheets and the benchmark.
Awesome.
So if you do follow me, go to George, Colorboy Geo. There's 2 accounts. So there's Colorboy Geo. Go to the George Colorboy Geo because we have on the highlights, you'll be able to see them. And I think it'll be under benchmarks and color techniques. And you'll be able to see everything that we did here. So that you'll be able to, and all the other things that we've done too previously with benchmarks and color applications.
It's on your hat. Show me
It's
that.
on my hat with my rainbow. Can you see it?
I'm delayed.
I know. I'm gonna bedazzle her. I will. You know I will. I'm gonna go get some rhinestones as soon as they open, when the fabric store opens. So, I hope you had a good time. I hope this helped some of you today. I know it's helped me with my blending and my melting and my applications of hand painting. I want to thank you guys for your time, and I want to wish everybody out there the best of luck with their reopening. And I'm just going to say to be patient and be kind to one another, and be say hi to a stranger.